Good day, doctor. My name is Lavanya and my metric number is 273203. The topic I choose to present is ethics, fraud, and corruption in government. Before I move further, I would like to talk about the current issue that is related to this topic. I got the information of this current issue from an article from the internet which was written on 25 May 2022. The title of the article is So, who exactly are under investigation for corrupt practices during pandemic? The DAP asks MACC. This is the title of the article. Based on this issue, the DAP Secretary General Anthony Locke called on the Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission MACC to publicly provide more information on this investigation into alleged corrupt practices in the health sector during the pandemic. He also said that MACC Chief Commissioner needs to be more transparent in this case and provide the public more information such as which ministries and government departments are involved, whether the case involves the Minister or Deputy Minister and the monetary value of the case. Besides, Azam then revealed that the MACC found elements of corruption in the government procurement of certain financial aid, medicine, and medical equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic. Azam also said that the investigations have started to discover the extent of bribery, power abuse, and fraud by unscrupulous people who take advantage of people's pain and misfortunes during the previous movement control orders since 2020. From this situation, we may tell that government is also participating in this corruption. This is not a good thing to hear as the government should not be the one who is engaged in this corruption situation. Now, let me continue with explaining the topic of my presentation. First of all, what is ethics? Ethics is two things. First, ethics refers to well-founded standards of right and wrong that prescribe what humans ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtues. Ethics, for example, refers to those standards that impose the reasonable obligations to refrain from rape, stealing, murder, assault, slander, and fraud. Secondly, ethics refers to study and development of one's ethical standards. As mentioned above, feelings, laws, and social norms can deviate from what is ethical. So, it is necessary to constantly examine one's standards to ensure that they are reasonable and well-founded. Now, we move on with fraud. What is fraud? Fraud is often defined as wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. The impact of fraud ranges from financial loss to declines in organizational performance, credibility, and public confidence. Examples of common fraud schemes are skimming, forgery or alteration, unauthorized vendor distribution, and unauthorized payroll disbursements. Let me discuss what factors can indicate fraud. The fraud triangle can help to explain the factors that lead to fraud and other types of unethical behavior within organization. According to the theory, three elements must exist for an individual to act unethically. The first one is perpetrators of fraud need an incentive or pressure to engage in misconduct. Secondly, there must be an opportunity to commit fraud, and this is often the focus area for internal auditors. And thirdly, perpetrators are often able to rationalize or justify their actions. The fraud triangle provides a useful framework for organizations to analyze their vulnerability to fraud and unethical behavior. If companies focus on preventing each factor, they can minimize the instances of fraud and other forms of unethical behavior. Further, the theory is useful in understanding who is more likely to commit fraud and the circumstances under which fraud is more probable. These can help the organizations focus their anti-fraud policies in targeted areas. For example, fraud is more likely to occur in circumstances where there are an inadequate or ineffective internal controls, such as in the early stages of development of a project or process when controls are still being formulated, or where there are only limited controls. The lack of resources can also present a risk affecting, for example, the integrity of controls if duties are not appropriately segregated, or allowing insufficient monitoring of transactions if an adequately staffed internal audit function is not in place. Next, I'm going to explain about corruption. Corruption is dishonest behavior by those in positions of power, such as managers or government officials. Corruptions can include giving or accepting bribes or inappropriate gifts, double dealing, under the table transactions, manipulating elections, diverting funds, laundering money, and defrauding investors. Since fraud and corruption can bring negative impacts to everyone, how can we prevent fraud and corruption? I can think 4 ways to prevent fraud and corruption. First one is to hire, train, and promote ethical employees. During the hiring process, perform thorough background checks on all applicants and train your managers to be vigilant while vetting prospective employees. Implement fraud education for your entire staff, as increased awareness is vital and highly effective in fraud prevention. The second way is by implementing internal controls. Internal control help in protecting your assets from fraud, keeping up-to-date transaction records, and ensuring you achieve your goals and objectives. Some of the controls you need in your organization include: firstly, the segregation of duties. This means the record keepers must be different from those who store assets. Secondly, monitoring access. This will help to keep a log of every employee's activities. And thirdly, doing management review. This means do regular audits of transaction records and asset inventories. The third way is by setting an example at the top. The executive board and upper management of a public department can create a culture of accountability throughout the organizations by writing a code of conduct. This code should outline the organization's stance on business ethics, describe fraudulent activities, and list their implications. A simple 3-sentence statement is enough provided it has all the components. And the last way is by using analytics to detect potential fraud. Government departments tend to handle more data than other organizations. However, most of them lack the tools to analyze this information and detect possible fraud. With the right resources, it's easy to identify fraudulent payments before they are made and prioritize investigation for transactions that appear shady. By using advanced analytical tools to sift through their data, public organizations can detect ongoing and looming corruption scandals and save a substantial amount of public funds. To conclude, government have to take quick steps regarding fraud and corruption by implementing the suggestions which I have mentioned just now, as well as they have to practice themselves to be ethical. This may assure a smoother government system with high trust of people towards our country. That's all from my presentation. Thank you so much.